Storytelling is essential to good leadership. When delivered correctly, a good story can help you articulate a vision, lead change, inspire creativity and innovation, and get employees to work together more collaboratively than you could ever do without a good story. In this EIY live stream session, our guest speaker will dig into the essential elements of a great narrative, explaining how to craft and deliver compelling leadership stories that can inspire and motivate employees. We will explain the right story structure, how to create emotional engagement, and even how to create a surprise ending that ensures your story will be remembered and acted upon. After being almost homeless several years ago, David Fisher is now an award winning international speaker, coach, and story amplifier. David is one of the top 10 speaking coaches in 2020 and 2022 and is featured in CBS and NBC. He has spoken to organizations and events internationally. Transformation Thailand and be inspired. He has coached other speakers around the world for numerous events such as TEDx, Tony Robbins' Power of Success, Humanizing the Homeless, and TEDx Stanley Park. His communication clients include Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, Progressive Intercultural Community Service, IM Communication, and Future B. Hello, Mr. David. Welcome you to EIY Education Session tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. Why is this topic so important, Mr. David?
That's a great question. And I actually get that quite a bit because, there's people like information, but we remember stories. That's why we go to movies. That's why we go to plays. But throughout human history, we're the only species or the only animals that we know of, at least, that can share ideas and pass it from generation to generation, from parent to child who becomes a parent who has a child to teach other children, to have schools. Isaac Newton came up with the theory of orbital dynamics, like how the moon goes around the earth and how the earth goes around the sun. 400 years later or so, we put somebody on the moon because of that. And that all starts with story. We were able to survive as a species, as people, because we could start telling stories at night after a hunt or after a gathering. We were able to share stories with other tribes and find peace. And so stories are just an integral part of who we are as a people and always have been. So we're always drawn to it.
I see. So it means that we have a long history related to storytelling, right?
We do.
And what does storytelling do to our brains when someone tells you a story?
That is a fantastic question. And one of the things that they've proven been able to do the scans on the brain is that when we tell a story and we tell a story with some feeling, the audience begins to feel the way we do. That's why when we go to a movie, if you've been to a movie and something happens and the audience claps or cheers, like it's a screen. There's nobody there that could actually hear that, but we're moved by the story. And so when a speaker shares a story, you're bringing the audience with you. If a story is done well, they can feel anxious with you. They can feel sad with you, but if you're telling a good speech, they're going to feel happy. They're going to feel inspired. They're going to want to be moved to action with you as well, because they're going to feel what you feel, and that can help create the change that you want to as a speaker.
So it means that storytelling has the power to move your emotion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in order to do that, what is story structure and also the elements in order to create a great narrative?
That's great. And one of the things that I teach is that there's a concept and a strategy with stories that we can follow. I also say that rules can sometimes be broken. You don't have to follow this every time, but if you understand this type of story structure, then you can get creative and build off of that. And so one of the most one of the most famous story narratives is the hero's journey. And Joseph, a researcher by the name of Joseph Campbell kind of started this. What I've done is Joseph Campbell has massive amounts of information, and I've just made it really simple. So how many of you have seen a Disney movie?
Yeah, a lot.
Exactly.
I'm a
A
fan of
lot
it.
of it. Yeah. And so you can walk in a Disney movie and you kind of know where you're at in the movie based on what's happening on screen. Same thing with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, like any of these movies that at least us in Canada are used to seeing, is that you have a character that is just, they're going about their life. They're just, their life is like this. It's their, it may be good, it may be bad, but there's really nothing exciting happening. And then something happens that changes the trajectory of their life. So for Harry Potter's living under the stairs, and then Hagrid comes in and says, Harry, you're a wizard. And then everything changes. So that change happens in all of our lives. We get married, a relative dies, we get a new job, we graduate from speaking class, like something happens that changes our trajectory. And during that change of that trajectory, we have other people that are helping us out. You, myself as a coach, Hagrid, right? Dumbledore, Obi-Wan Kenobi helping Luke Skywalker. These people come along and they help us. And so this trajectory comes along, but we're not alone. But then there's these battles that we have to face. And the battles don't have to be the force, like the light and the dark side of the force. It doesn't have to be like Voldemort and Dumbledore. Sometimes it's just a battle to increase our own abilities, our own strength to become a better speaker, to become a better student, or to become a better business owner. But as we go through this, we are changed by it. And at the end, after we go through this trajectory, then we come as a new person in a new world, and we're better and we're stronger from it. So to break that down simply, it's our lives change, but we're not alone. There's others that help us. Sometimes that others that help us might even be a YouTube channel or a movie. That we grow and then we get better at the end. And that's really the basic story structure, that if you can follow that, the audience will follow along with you. That's what Disney does. That's what, well, now Disney owns Star Wars, but so Star Wars does, Lord of the Rings. Any good story that has sort of a hero's ending, a happy ending, will follow that basic structure.
I see. So it means that we have three main components of a story structure. The first one is your character. The second one is the challenge or the problem happening during the way that the character is getting to his or her goal. And finally, the resolution, right? What happens at the end. So
Bingo, you got it.
those three components will make a story.
Really good.
So,
Like a story in 3 acts, right? If you go to a play and they have like a 3-act play, there's one intermission, but there's usually 3 acts. That's basically what happens. So yeah, right on.
I see. So let me clarify this point.
Sure.
The problem can be negative, either negative and positive, or the problem is just about negativity.
Really good question. In real life, in sharing, in movies, we movies tend to take us through a negative something that happens, a breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or a loss of a job, or evil is taking over the world, or something like that. In real life, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just it's more exciting when we go to movies to see something like that, and hope it all turns out at the end. But in real life, it could be, you're right, it could be a promotion, it could be a graduation, it could be the birth of a child, it could be anything like that sends us on a new trajectory. So you're absolutely correct. And we can still share that story in the same way. We can still grab the audience's attention to go, oh, what happened next? What did you do then? Even with positive things. Sometimes it's nice to take the audience, if you're telling a really good story, to make a point, to take them on a little bit of a roller coaster of a journey, because then you want people to go, oh no. But then you come out with a happy ending at the end, and they're more engaged, and they're going, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You overcame that obstacle, or that was difficult, but you succeeded. And that means I can do it too. So you're right. It can't be positive or negative, but negative you can take them on a little bit of an emotional journey, which can be good as long as you have the happy ending at the end.
I got you. So I think that one of the popular types of stories that leaders need to tell nowadays, that is the bad news story, because there's so many crises and challenges that happening in business nowadays.
Mhm.
How can we use storytelling in order to tell the bad news to your staff or employees?
Wow, that's an excellent question, and you're right. That happens a lot, and one of
Yeah.
the things that I work with a lot with companies, especially lately, is
Mm,
change management.
yeah,
How do you
change.
create? How do you create that change from a negative situation, but make it
Mm,
positive?
right.
Um, and number one is understand your people,
Mm,
understand their stories, because
mm,
everybody's going to respond to something negatively a little bit different.
mm,
In a recent situation with a company that I work with, something they had a major shift, and one person got angry, another
mm,
person started crying, another
mm,
person didn't care, right? So everybody's a little bit different. And
mm,
if, as a leader, if you understand your people, then
mm,
you can address that situation in an individual level. Maybe you have to share it as a group, but it's important that you follow up individually and
mm,
really meet the needs of the individuals. To share it, it's best to let them know that bad news is coming. I'm sorry I brought you all here today, but I have some bad news. I'm just going to
mm,
share it, but then I'm going to provide a solution. So
mm,
when you're sharing that bad news with the company, don't don't talk for 20 minutes and then say the bad news. Just say the bad news. Let them know, prepare them. I have bad
mm,
news. Brace yourselves. You're not going to like this. It's okay to say that, because then people go, okay, okay,
mm,
what is it? Right. Then you share it and say, but here's what we're going to do. Here's how
mm,
we're moving forward. Here's now where you change the narrative. Everybody's like
mm,
this. The company chances something happens, but
mm,
together, here's the plan. We're going to bring ourselves out of it, and we need all of you
mm,
to join us in this. So you still kind of follow that format a little bit, but the important thing is know your people
mm,
and have a strategy, have some sort of solution and
mm,
a path forward. So
yeah.
you don't go, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, can you
Mm,
tell me? Right? That doesn't help. You need some sort of idea or path that
mm,
you've created. That path might change as you grow
mm,
out of it, but at least you have something where people can go, okay, I know
mm,
where we're doing next. This is bad
yeah.
news, but I know what the next step is.
So it's better to have a solution for them, right?
At least some ideas and at least a path, a
Mm,
general path forward. Yes, for sure.
right.
Absolutely.
Got you, David. And sometimes that whenever I hear some people about to tell a story, they say that I'm going to tell you a story. Do you think that is a great way to start when you tell a story to someone, or what is the other ways that we can use it in order to tell a compelling story?
I usually say no. There's not really a
Mm,
rule against it, but I
mm,
usually just start with a story. Lots of times I'll start, if in speaking, sometimes I
mm,
will just start with a bit of a story. Other
mm,
times later on, after I may share some things, I'll just start with a story. And the most common thing that I do before I share a story
mm,
is I pause. So I'll
mm,
finish up my point. So I'll say, and that is point number one on how you start a great morning. 2 months ago, and
mm,
usually then if I'm not on a screen, I can move on stage. I can walk across the stage and have that little bit of a pause and say, here's what happened to me 2 months ago. Or two
mm,
months ago, you might relate to this, but
mm,
I woke up late for a really important meeting. Right now you're setting the stage for that story, but sometimes it's just the pause and the
mm,
inflection and
mm,
change. But when you pause, the audience can kind of lean in and go, ooh,
yeah.
what's he going to say next? You can change your voice, right?
Mm,
And so that's usually the best way just to start a story, because
mm,
if you go to a movie, you're not like, and today we're going to watch a movie. Like, you just sit down and you start watching the movie. And so that's what this happens. You can build that anticipation, like you're sitting in a
mm,
seat waiting for the movie to start. You can do that as a speaker. Have that pause
mm.
and then start sharing the story.
Awesome. So use pause in order to start and capture audience attention because you can create anticipation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes I realize that it's really hard to engage your audience for the whole story. So what is your tip or suggestion in order to engage the audience throughout the time that you tell them a story?
That is a terrific question. And if a story is told well, which means you don't tell the ending. If you're here, don't tell them you're up here right away. Tell them about the struggles that you're going through, the changes that happen, so that the audience can lean in and doesn't know. Throw some twists and turns and surprises and things in there to get the audience's attention. So as one example, I give in one of the speeches that I've given before, and I've used this story. I customize every speech I give, but one of the stories that I tell is that once I was doing a fundraiser and I was doing an auction, and I told my mom that, and she started laughing. She's like, "You're gonna like auction stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, it'll be fun. It's for a fundraiser, and it'll be really good to do." And so I did the auction, and it went really well, and I was really excited. So I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is great! What am I going to do? Do I want to stay? Do I want to go home? I think I kind of want to mingle a little bit, but I also just, I think I just need some fresh air." And I pulled up my phone, and I saw a text from my mom, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is really exciting. She probably wanted to know how the auction went." And I opened up the text, and my mom's text said, "I have cancer." And then I paused, and the audience goes, right? Now, I don't tell that story and say, "Oh, by the way, no, she's fine. She's okay. Everything is okay. Everything turned out well." I don't tell that part of that story right away. I wait a couple minutes and say, "What did I learn from that?" I learned how to go over to her house and have a really heartfelt, good conversation with her and talk about life and talk about struggles and just connect and be with her. And the first thing she said to me was, "I think you need me more than I need you right now." And so that created a bond that I never had before with my mom. But I don't tell her that I don't tell the audience everything turned out okay right away, because they're going to want to know what happened.
Yeah,
And so there's a way we can tell those stories too, even if it's just, I woke up and I realized, "Oh no, I have 20 minutes to get to the airport. I'm going to miss my flight." Then don't say, "Oh, but it's okay. I made the flight. But here, let me tell you what happened." Keep us guessing, and then give us the ending when you get to that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely, David. You just teach me something that you don't serve the audience everything you have, but you need to know where is the right moment to feed the right information to your audience at that time to make sure that they still can engage, and because that is what they want now. But you might want to create some curiosity and tension for them to guess.
Exactly. And then at the end, just have a really clear point. Lots of times a speaker will tell a story to entertain, which is okay if that's your purpose of the speech, is to entertain. But if the purpose of your speech is to inform or persuade or inspire, then you want to make sure that story fits. So you don't just, so the audience doesn't go, "Well, that's a nice story, but what do I get out of it?" You want the audience to go, "Oh, that's what I learned." And then they'll remember the story, and they'll remember the lesson from the story as well.
I see. Should we share with your audience the lesson right away after you tell the story, or whether we have any other better way to share with the story? This is the lesson, or this is the takeaway that I want you to learn from the story.
I usually do it right away. And the reason why is they're emotionally connected. If the story is engaging right away and people are going, "Oh," and they're really paying attention to the story, you immediately follow with the answer. And so what happens now is, now when I talk about creating deeper connections, they remember the relationship I had or the conversation I had with my mom, and they're like, "Great, deeper connections. I'm going to text my mom or my dad or my grandma or whatever, like right now." Right.
Yeah.
So I usually follow it right away with that practical application.
I see. Got you. So we understand that storytelling is really powerful because it does not only create emotional connection, but also it can persuade people. Because as long as you can connect with your audience with the emotional level, you can persuade them for sure.
Yes.
So, with that reason, many people use storytelling in order to manipulate people's mind. So, as a speaker, how can we avoid that? And also, as the audience, how can you pick out sometimes that some speakers just try to use it in order to manipulate your mind?
That is such an important question, especially nowadays, right? Because and one of the things that science can really do better at, and that's why there's science communicators, is that when things are expressed, lots of times there's data and facts to back up a proven point, but then that one person from the other side tells a story that's different, and people remember the story. They remember the one person and not the 1,000 people, because the 1,000 people, the scientist talks about the facts, the one person told the story. And one of the things as a speaker, and one of the things that I always do, and I reference a lot of usually sociology and psychology in my talks, is I reference who they are. You know, Robin Dunbar, a major sociologist, this is what he says. So I'll tell the story and say, this is what Robin Dunbar came up with that supports my story and that supports sort of science. As an audience member, you always want to be thinking critically as well. You want to be able to say, okay, that's a good story, but do the facts support this story, or is this just a story, especially if it's persuasion? And it's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to question. And if you just have a story, but you don't have anything else to kind of go along with that, then as an audience member, you want to question that and say, okay, is there something behind the story? Is the story unique? And lots of times you'll get a lot of people who are like selling products or marketing things. And so they tell these great stories, but really, does that work for everybody? Or are you just telling the story of the few who succeeded by doing these steps? And so it's okay to ask those questions, and it's okay to analyze and do a little bit of research. But it's important as a speaker to be able to support your points, not just with a story, but have the facts behind it so that you can support that. And then if people ask questions, or if people come up to you afterwards, you're also able to engage in more of a conversation if you need to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it means that as an audience, you may want to be critical to analyze the information that the speaker is trying to convey to us, right?
Exactly. It's a balance between the story and the information, and both of those have to be balanced out. The story helps us remember the information, but if we only have story, then and there's gaps. If we can't support that with information, as an audience member, I would be very wary. I would want both.
Got you. Okay, I think that let's come to the final question we have for you today. What is your final message that you would like to share with our audience before we're gonna finish?
That's nice. Usually what I tell people is, I don't know if you've had this on, but you've had people who are like, but I don't have any stories to share. Right? And we all have stories to share. I was speaking with a person that I was coaching a few years ago, and he was a multimillionaire business owner, and he told me a story once that he got kidnapped for ransom. He was vice president of a company at the time, and the company paid the ransom, and he was set free. He was in Central America, and he told that story to me personally, but all of his speeches never shared that story. I said, why don't you share any stories in the speeches? And he goes, I don't have any stories to share. I'm like, you were kidnapped. Yes, you do. But not all of us have been kidnapped, thankfully. But all of us have lost a loved one. All of us have experienced joy, been in a relationship, broken up, got a job, graduated, was late for the airport. Like, all of us have these stories. So on one hand, we have these extraordinary stories like being kidnapped. And on the other hand, we have these stories of just everyday life that we can tell. And the extraordinary stories, we go, oh, that's unusual. Tell me more. And the other stories are, oh, I can relate to that. I know how that feels. Tell me more. So the extraordinary and the ordinary are both important in storytelling, which means all of us have stories to tell. So you never have to say, I don't have any stories to tell, because we know you do.
Why do people say that they don't have any story to tell, David?
I think it's because we're so engrossed in media. So we have social media, and we have movies, and we have all of these things that tell these extraordinary stories. And then you do have speakers that come, and there's a speaker that climbed Mount Everest, or there's a speaker that survived a plane crash, or a speaker that survived a disease. And those are amazing. We need to hear those. That inspires humanity. But when we hear all that, we think, oh, I don't have any of those. And so we feel like we don't have a story to share. But all of us have stories that we can share, because it may just be, I've heard really great speakers just talk about changing their diet to live a healthier lifestyle because they felt lethargic and they didn't have enough energy to get through the day. you could craft a story of that, and all of us go, oh wow, I can do that. I could eat better. I could sleep more.
Mhm.
I can do these things, right? So that's why I think all of the information we tend to remember, or these things, these stories that rise to the top, are
Mhm.
these extraordinary stories, and we tend to
Yeah.
forget that these ordinary stories can really change us, and yet they do. There's more ordinary stories than there are extraordinary stories, and I've heard more speeches with ordinary stories than
Yeah.
extraordinary stories, and they're amazing because we can all connect with that, and it's
Mm.
about connecting with the audience, not about necessarily wowing the audience with your story, but creating a connection. That's what
Mm.
creates the change that we want.
I see. So what I take from your sharing is that sometimes I think just because we compare our stories with other people's stories and we have high expectation on the story that we would like to
Mhm.
tell. So that's why that we just come with a comment that we don't have any stories. But actually that we just think that we just have high expectation on the stories.
Yeah, you're right. You got it.
Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you so much, David, for joining us tonight.
My
I do
pleasure.
appreciate it so much because I learned so many things from you. So, so in case that our audience would like to know more about what you are doing, how can we contact you?
Oh yeah, great question. Of course, it's a great question. But you can reach me at davidfish.ca. It's
Yeah.
davidfish.ca. In addition to speaking and coaching, then I also have a new online program called Amplify Your Story, and you can find it there just on the homepage. It's Amplify Your Story. But feel free to reach out anytime. I have questions from audience members a lot, even online, where they might email me or contact me later. I'm
Mhm.
also on usually most social media platforms. It's the same thing, davidfish.ca. But if you start with my website, it would be easy to find me.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining EIY education session tonight. I hope to see you again next week. My name is Lan Anh. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, bye bye.